Bigfoot of Riverbend. There have been several sightings of a creature fitting the description of Bigfoot reported throughout the Riverbend. According to the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, an organization dedicated to investigating the authenticity of Bigfoot sightings based on both witness reports and scientific evidence, says as many as 284 sightings of the ape man have been reported in Illinois, with most of the sightings being set in Madison County, which has 23 itself. This number is compared to the other squatchier states like Oregon, having only 243 sightings. In fact, only California, Florida, and Washington have more reported sightings than Illinois, with 434, 310, and a whopping 623, respectively. Looking at counties in or near the Riverbend, Madison has 23, Macoupin has 15, Jersey has 2, St. Clair has 4, Calhoun has 3, Pike has 1, and Greene does not have any. These numbers may be surprising to many because Madison County seems to have the most population of them. Perhaps that is why it reports the most sightings, because more people are around to squatch watch. The most recent sighting from Madison County came in November of 2016 in Troy. According to the BFRO's website, a witness reported the following sighting near Scott-Troy Road. I was driving along Scott-Troy Road after work one night. It was around 8:15 p.m. when I was driving through some wooded parts of Scott-Troy. I saw something large, black, and hairy take 2 or 3 giant bounds across the road before it disappeared on the other side. I slowed down for a bit, trying to see what it was, but it was too dark to see what it was and where it had gone. The single witness said it was very large, standing at least 8 feet tall, and said that the creature was fast enough to take on a 2-lane road in just 3 large steps. In October 2011, another sighting was reported by a homeowner near Edwardsville. According to the BFRO website, the incident occurred near I-55, and the homeowner reported the following incident. I had just gotten my son down to sleep. It was 1 a.m. He sleeps in the back bedroom. I happened to walk by the window in the hallway because I had to go to the bathroom. For some reason, I heard a cough. It sounded like someone clearing their throat. I had just put the pool down. We have one of those quick set pool rings that you blow up for my son. I'd just taken it down and it was drying off. I thought someone was out there for whatever reason, looking at it or messing with it. So I opened the blinds and looked. I didn't see anything right off the bat. But then I saw something between the woods and my shed. It was just standing there, and it was big. The head looked huge, so I ran upstairs and got my night vision. When I kicked that night vision on, I could see every detail. It was just standing there, staring up into the trees. It was at least 8.5 feet tall, and it looked like it was gray in color. It looked like a really big human. If people want to know what the face looks like, if you put this guy in a Viking movie with a horned helmet on, people would say it was a Viking. That's how human looking he was. He had really sunken eyes, but he was just looking up into the trees. And then, I heard someone's radio down at the parking lot at the bike trail. It was pretty amazing. I was watching this thing hanging out there because it looked like he was waiting for people to leave. Nobody could see him in there, and the only reason I did is because I was walking by the window and just happened to see something in my yard that wasn't normally there. I even went to wake up my wife to have her see it too, but when we got back to the window, it was gone. That sighting was investigated by BFRO investigator Stan Courtney, who is BFRO's main investigator in Illinois. While Angie Moan and the rest of the crew at TNI have not had Bigfoot sightings, that does not mean that the ape-like man, or man-like ape, has not made a few excursions into Godfrey. In the winter of 2011, a witness in Godfrey near Route 3 reported several incidents near his home. The witness reported several sightings across his property, even saying that members of his family had heard mysterious howls. After investigating reports of several incidents, Courtney reported the following. I spoke with the witness by phone and met with him at his home. The witness went into great detail about a series of events. His home is surrounded by woods on all sides. He says he and his family had a feeling of being watched there several times. He had a friend that would come over to go mushroom hunting. The friend returned from the woods frightened, saying that he felt like he was surrounded and being escorted out of the woods. He never came back over to mushroom hunt again. Just before Christmas of 2012, the witness put up Christmas lights along his porch and bushes in front of his home. While doing so, he said that a large bush 50 yards away from him on the edge of the woods began to shake violently. The witness said he became quite upset and he couldn't see what was making the bush shake. The family hears distant vocalizations frequently, and he said some of the howls match those that we have on our site, and some of those he's heard on the popular show Finding Bigfoot. The witness walked me to a location on the property where he had seen an animal walking up the ridge as he pulled his vehicle out into the lane of travel onto the highway. He was able to watch the animal for about 15 seconds as it walked through the woods and out of sight over the ridge. The witness said that the creature that he saw was at least 7 to 8 feet tall, weighed over 350 pounds, and was dark brown in color. In the summer of 2004 in the city of Alton, 2 teenagers reported seeing a broad, hairy creature walking upright like a man that weighed over 250 pounds. Courtney said that the 2 young witnesses were very polite and serious. He also spoke with one of the witnesses' parents, who had walked the area of the sighting for over 90 minutes. The 2 teens were building a blind for squirrel hunting and tried to no avail to push a dead tree to the ground. Later, that tree cracked and fell to the ground, possibly pushed over by this large creature that was over 7 to 8 feet tall. The teen said that the creature also howled and threw rocks, which according to many witnesses is typical Bigfoot behavior. Outside of Madison County, residents of Otterville have also reported startling accounts of bipedal, non-human hominids. On May 23, 2008, a driver said he almost hit one of the creatures on Otterville Blacktop, north of Shiloh Hill Road. The witness recounted the following chilling tale. It was right around the time of my birthday. I was on vacation visiting my cousin at his girlfriend's house. We had ran into Jerseyville for cigarettes and we were on our way back to her house off of Otterville Blacktop. I was driving around 55 miles an hour around these curves just before Shiloh Hollow Road when I caught something in my headlights running across the field headed for the road. At first I thought it was just a man in a trench coat, but then it ran up the embankment and onto the road in front of the car. I barely missed it. It just made it in front of the car as I passed, and it half turned towards me at the center line of the road. It was within 4 feet of the side of my car. I realized then that it wasn't a man in a trench coat. It was covered with hair, and the face looked flattened with a wide nose, large nostrils, and huge eyes. I continued to watch this thing run up a 20-foot embankment on the other side of the road without even losing its pace. In shock, I turned to look at my cousin. His eyes were as big as mine, and we found ourselves asking, what the hell was that? We both agreed that whatever it was, it definitely wasn't a human. The witness also reported that a friend had spotted something similar running directly in front of his four-wheeler, approximately 10 miles from that location near a bridge. The friend had also almost hit the creature, saying that it wasn't a man, but it was running on 2 legs. The friend described the creature as heavily built and covered with hair. While no definitive evidence of such creatures are part of the local fauna, several witnesses have claimed to have seen it. True enthusiasts of this hairy hominid offer several explanations for this, including claims that the creatures are migratory in nature. They bury their dead, and even some more out-there claims believe that they are extra-dimensional or part of the extraterrestrial visitation phenomenon, to which many paranormal researchers also describe. Unidentified intruder or unexplained hominid. Mr. Tumi was sitting home watching the baseball game when he heard a strange noise originating from the back porch. Thinking that it was a prowler, he retrieved his pistol and went around the back to investigate. He saw what he says looked like a dark, man-like entity running through the woods. He fired shots at it, and then he ran to the back of his trailer for more bullets. He saw the creature again down by the old stable. He fired at it again, but he missed. Tumi discovered that the freezer on his back porch had been broken into, and some of the frozen chicken was removed and scattered all around outside. He also found some unusual white hair and impressions on the ground. Tumi told the Flemingsburg Times-Democrat, "It was very dark, so I really couldn't tell exactly what it was. It stood up like a man, but it was so dark. About all I could see was a huge shadow, and it made a strange thumping noise as it ran away." Mrs. Tumi arrived home and her husband told her what had happened. She immediately called the sheriff's office. Deputies soon arrived along with a group of locals who had heard the complaint on the police scanners. The entire group searched the area until 3 a.m. when the deputies found the scattered meat. The next day, more tracks were discovered by a gully. Evidence indicated that something had slid down the embankment. Other prints were found in the wet sand and were estimated to be between 12 and 14 inches in length and 6 inches wide. Unfortunately, the prints were not clear enough to establish whether it was a man's print or not. More evidence was discovered as Tumi found long white hairs on the doorknob of his freezer. All the evidence certainly indicates that something got onto his back porch and robbed the freezer of chicken, hot dogs, and bread. To all those that know him, Tumi's reputation is without question. Let us just for a moment believe it was a prowler rather than some hairy hominid. Police reports do show that they've been receiving calls about a strange blonde-haired man seen roaming about over the past few weeks. The white hairs found at the site were forwarded to the Kentucky State Police for analysis by their crime lab. A week later, the results came back and it was determined that the hair was of human origin. The state police concluded that the hair was light brown, blonde, and white, from a Caucasian male. The local police did have the possibility of a suspect in mind. There was a white male who was a former mental patient who had been seen by others in the area. This man was described as having long blonde hair and a beard. However, this is circumstantial, and to the best of our knowledge, nobody has ever been charged. In a later interview, McGill told us that he was not convinced that the subject seen at the Tumis was a human. Sheriff White told him that they had discovered remains of a package of meat and bread that had been ripped open and consumed in a frozen state. The sheriff said that if the meat had thawed, there would have been signs of blood, but no blood was found. Hair analysis can be inconclusive, and it does typically take longer than a week to fully complete the comparison testing. The prints could have been weathered. Eating frozen meat is not a human tendency, so this case is still up in the air, although the evidence does weigh towards the prowler theory. However, Mr. McGill thinks there's an unknown creature roaming the area based on the information that he has uncovered. Bigfoot in the Huachuca Mountains. My two buddies and I had gone to the Huachuca Mountains in Cochise County for a hiking and camping trip. That year, wildfires had spread throughout the area, so we weren't able to go to all the places that we wanted to. We couldn't go up to Carr Canyon, so we took a detour to Miller Canyon instead. Here, we found a quiet spot off the main road to set up our small dome tent and sleep for the night. We didn't see any other cars on the road in the area where we were. In the middle of the night, I woke up to my friend screaming. Our tent had a mesh ceiling, so we could see the night sky. I asked him what was wrong, and he said he had seen a Bigfoot. I smiled at first, but his serious expression made me realize he wasn't joking. He told me, "Man, I know what I saw. I wasn't dreaming. I remember it clearly. I looked up through the tent and I saw this face staring back at me. The moonlight was so bright and it was standing in front of it, so I couldn't make out its facial features. but I could see the silhouette perfectly. Its head was long and it didn't really have a neck. Its head seemed to blend right into its shoulders. It was huge. It had to be at least 8 feet tall. It was leaning over our tent, looking through the mesh, down at me. I could see what looked like the whites of its eyes. We stared at each other for about 30 seconds, and then it was gone. He said as it moved away, that's when he screamed out. We didn't try to leave our tent or chase after it. I trust my friend completely. We goof around a lot, but I know when he's not kidding about something. I believe his story. I also had a strange experience while hiking in the Wasatch Mountains of Utah. I had this strong feeling, almost like I could touch it, that I was being watched. I stopped and looked around, but I didn't see anything. This feeling didn't go away, so I started singing as I walked. I've been alone in the woods before, but this was different. At this time, I was walking through an aspen grove in an area known for Bigfoot sightings. I later found out that this being watched feeling often happens to people who see Bigfoot. If I had known that then, I would have certainly paid more attention. Angus McCaskill, the Cape Breton giant. In 1981, the Guinness Book of World Records recognized McCaskill as the largest true giant, the strongest man, and the man with the largest chest measurements of any non-obese man to have ever lived. The distinction of his status as a true giant hinges on the fact that Angus was purported to be free of any growth abnormalities. His stature was proportional in every way, and his immense size and strength was due only to his natural genetic gifts. McCaskill was born in a little village called Shaby on the island of Bairnaray in Scotland. His dad was Norman McCaskill, and he was only 5 foot 9 inches tall, and his mother Christina Campbell was also of regular size for a woman of the time. He had 12 brothers and sisters, but some of them died when they were very young. McCaskill was a normal-sized baby. After a few years, the family moved to a fishing community called Englishtown in Cape Breton Island, Nova Scotia, in around 1831. When Angus was a teenager, he started growing really fast. By the time he was 20 years old, he was 7 feet 4 inches tall, and within another year or so, he had reached 7 feet 9 inches tall and weighed an astonishing 510 pounds. His shoulders were 44 inches wide, and his hand was 8 inches wide and 12 inches long. His wrists were 13.5 inches around, and his ankles were 18 inches around. By 1863, he was wearing boots that were over 17.5 inches long. His feet were around 16 inches long and 8 inches wide. He had deep-set blue eyes and a musical but somewhat hollow voice. And despite his size, he was said to have had a mild and gentle manner. In his hometown of St. Anne's, McCaskill was known as Gilles Amour, which means big boy in English. Many people also called him the Cape Breton Giant, or simply Giant McCaskill. When he was 14 years old, he went on a fishing boat from St. Anne's to North Sydney. The crew took him to a dance. During the dance, McCaskill got into a fight with another dancer and punched him in the jaw. The man fell to the floor and was knocked out for so long, the other dancers thought he was dead. When the captain of the boat found out what happened, he saw McCaskill praying on his knees, hoping that he hadn't killed the man. McCaskill was known for his incredible feats of strength. People said that he could lift a ship's anchor that weighed 2,800 pounds and carry barrels weighing over 350 pounds under each arm. It was also said that he could lift 112 pounds with just 2 fingers and hold it out for over 10 minutes. In 1849, he joined the P.T. Barnum Circus and performed alongside General Tom Thumb. He also went on a tour of the West Indies and Cuba in 1853. Queen Victoria heard about McCaskill's strength and invited him to Windsor Castle to show off his abilities. She called him the tallest, strongest man to ever enter the palace and gave him 2 gold rings as a thank you. The fishermen in McCaskill's hometown of St. Anne's were jealous of his strength. While they worked hard to bail out their boats, McCaskill could lift his 2-ton boat and empty it of water effortlessly. He could also raise a 40-foot mast by himself, and it was even said that he could lift a horse over a 4-foot fence with very little effort. There are different stories about an incident with an anchor that may have happened in either New York or New Orleans. French sailors dared McCaskill to lift an anchor that weighed between 2,200 and 2,700 pounds. He easily lifted it and walked down the wharf, but one of the anchor's flukes caught him in the shoulder, causing a terrible injury. However, the injury didn't cause his death, and he would go on to live for many more years. After his career in show business, McCaskill returned to his hometown of Englishtown and bought a grist mill, a general store, and other properties. In the summer of 1863, McCaskill went on a trip to Halifax, the capital city. He planned to sell some things and buy some other things for his store for the winter season. But during that trip, he got really sick. He was transported back to St. Anne's and put up in his parents' home. They quickly made his childhood bed longer and put it in the living room so they could take care of him. The doctor said that he had a brain fever. After being sick for a week, McCaskill peacefully passed away in his sleep on August 8, 1863. The minister and many of his neighbors and friends were there as he passed away. The Halifax Acadian Recorder wrote about McCaskill after his death. They said that he was the tallest man in Nova Scotia, and maybe even in all of British America. They also mentioned that he was a kind and gentle person whom everyone liked. The entire country mourned as they buried him in Englishtown Cemetery, next to his parents. His burial mound is much bigger than his parents because of his enormous size. Bigfoot on the Road to James Bay, 2009. My name is Roger. I live in a medium-sized city east of Montreal in an agricultural area. This hunting trip represented a 1,600-kilometer car ride. I went there alone after the supplier I was dealing with assured me it was possible to join a group of hunters once there. Usually, they ask hunters to form a group before they buy a hunting trip. The hunt went well, and it happened on the 8th, 9th, and 10th of February of 2009. February 11th was the departure date, and after a ride of about 900 kilometers, I stopped in the city of Matagami for the night. The next day, on February 12th, I had 700 kilometers left before I got home. I left Matagami at around 8:15 and on the road 109 going south towards Amos City. I was cruising along at about 90 kilometers an hour. The weather was clear with little cloud cover. It was around negative 10 degrees Celsius and there was almost no wind. The surrounding forest was mixed with fir, spruce, poplar, and birch. At around 9:10 p.m., the following event happened. Though it lasted only around 6 seconds from the first sight to the end, I must describe to you what went through my mind. I came to a straight portion of the road that gave me a view of about 500 meters. At the end of that portion of the road was a small hill with the road curving around back to the left. At the top of the hill on the left side, the east side of the road, was a big post announcing Hydro-Quebec installations. The secondary road that led to those installations was closer to me on the right or the west side of the road, about 250 meters from the post. At first glance, I thought there was a large black plastic garbage tub on the left side of the road at a distance of about 400 to 450 meters away from me. It looked like it was about the same distance away as the Hydro-Quebec post, right next to the road. It was a trash can, rectangular and tall, but it didn't seem to reflect any light. It was as black as coal. I thought it was strange since there wasn't a house or a cabin nearby. When I got closer, about 350 meters away, I noticed it was moving towards me down the hillside on the side of the road. It wasn't a trash can. It looked more like a person, like a tall man. He looked like he was wearing a snowsuit, and I figured that he had to have a hood on the suit because his head and shoulders looked bell-shaped. The first thing I noticed was how black he was. And the second was that it was all one color. There was no difference in the color from head to toe, and there was no way to distinguish anything from the outline, like boots, pants, coat, or anything. But from that far away, that's all I could see. But the reason I think this was a Bigfoot is because what happened next. I checked my rearview mirror to see if there were any cars behind me. This only took about 1 to 5 seconds, but when I looked back, the person was gone. It was weird that he vanished in such a wide open space. I didn't calculate it at the time, but he must have ran pretty fast to get into those woods, because there were 2 large clear areas on either side of the road, filled with deep snow. At first I thought maybe he had gone up his driveway to a cabin, but when I went back and checked out the area where he disappeared, there was no cabin, no house, no road, no car, no trail, nothing. Just the woods.